All right, this is me showing you a cycle of harvesting from what I call the desert bonsai food forest garden dome. I've got this hinged door that was salvaged wood from the property here, and I have those rocks wedged against it to keep critters out of the bottom to keep it secure. And then I just crawl through there, and I got to be careful to make sure that that hardware cloth doesn't turn into a cheese grater. It's cut me a few times, so I got to be careful. But just crawl in there and forces me to keep a low profile. It's good to have a lower profile with the wind, and then these domes, they're like $200, so you can't get a better deal than that. I just have that bungee cord to secure the door onto itself so I don't get a bunch of lizards and scorpions and camel spiders coming in there. So this is pretty shredded burlap pieces that got tore up in the wind when I had them on the top of the dome. Luckily, after this I went and found another supply of it near on the property that I had stashed away, so I was able to get bigger solid pieces. But there's a major sandstorm the other day, and they worked well to keep everything alive. I did some extra watering, and now I'm harvesting these microgreens. Got my little homemade skateboard to sit on and to kneel on. And removing these rocks because I had to weigh down the burlap during that storm, but I don't want them to stay on there because they're going to inhibit the free growth of all these things. They pretty much work together to raise the burlap when it's not weighted down, which is nice because they're not constrained normally, but you see that they're a bit constrained. So I'm just going to make the rounds here with this board, move aside that irrigation line, and that board does have wheels, and if I swept this out, it would roll around. I've had to use it when I've had injuries before for mobility, but for now I don't mind picking it up. Mainly it's to keep me above the red ants or the seed harvester ants that tear me up. This is going to be one of the last harvests I'm going to be able to do before they start really coming out. And when all that moisture in the ground dries up and the sand outside of here, the only moisture that's going to be around for months is going to be the moisture that I'm putting into these pots to irrigate them. So they get filled with ants, which I don't mind because they're doing the work of earthworms in the desert. That's what they're doing. They're fertilizing and aerating the soil. So I don't mind them that they go into these pots as I'm watering them. However, they tend to, when I disturb it, when I'm coming in here to do a harvest, they freak out and they start coming out like an army, and they get all over my hands. They sting me, so I'm going to be wearing gloves, and then I have to be really mindful about them possibly climbing up my shoes or anywhere else. So this is, again, one of the last times I'm going to be able to do this before they're going to be everywhere. Well, what do we have here? This is... What I'm thrilled about is one of these cans really had the best growth of a lot of the pea greens that I'm growing right there. So you see these, the very, all these pea greens. There's some cilantro, there's a lot of alliums, garlic and green onions and leeks and whatnot that I've been getting out of here. A lot of the seedlings coming up. There's mustard greens, there's amaranth, there's a lot of flax I just planted. So here I am, just having done that cycle. I'm about to climb out again. Folding up the scissors, wiping the chlorophyll off of them. I got a little side pocket they're going to go into on my shoulder, and then dropping the door down on that hinge. Be mindful of this cheese grater that I got to traverse, and that could be optimized. I could lay some fabric over that eventually. But yeah, a friend of mine said to me recently, man, there's a method you can use to just get the raw materials to build a dome of any size. You don't have to be stuck with a small one, although I did raise the small one because it was so cheap, but it's only 5 foot tall. So to me, I see it as part of the obstacle course. It's part of the tactical training. You got to be able to get in there and get down with whatever could be biting you and stinging you down there and slide through and be careful. So it's just part of the obstacle course for now, unless I decide to raise this one up later. But yeah, that bowl is what you see was me chopping it down to smaller pieces so it could go into this ferment. Now this ferment is a good example of what happens when you don't have adequate something to push the top of the food in the fermentation jar down above that mold line, above where the water's in contact with the air, so you get that mold layer. But just like you would cut it off cheese and not worry about it, you just scrape it off. I'm throwing it in the compost. I'm not thrilled that I had to sacrifice a bit of it at the top, but it's because these jars are a little bit wider than these glass weights that I am able to use to keep them in place. I'm going to show that in a minute, but yeah, there you see, you take that mold off the top, you stir it up, everything's fine. So I'm just adding to this existing brine. There was plenty of salt in it already, so I'm not worried about adding salt, but I am going to add some vinegar in a moment. So yeah, those little stainless steel folding scissors, I use them for everything, and they really make this. I really want to chop up those pea greens into a fine, because the tendrils that come up that they climb with, they're really fibrous. So I like to cut them down as much as I can, so I don't really notice them, and it just is more palatable later. This is going to be part of. This is basically a kimchi. It's going to be part of a salsa kimchi that I make. And there goes one of those weights. Obviously that's for a quart jar, and this is a little bit wider. Last thing I'm going to do is add some vinegar. That'll help to, in my experience, keep some of that mold down.